My name is Ashley, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, I married Bobby, the man I adore. Bobby is caring, lively, and always makes me feel valued. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about his mother, Catherine. From the very beginning, she seemed to have issues with me. I understand that Bobby is her beloved son, and she wants to protect him, but her overbearing nature crosses boundaries far too frequently. Catherine has a way of provoking reactions while pretending to be innocent, and then playing the victim. Unfortunately, this is all too familiar to me. She's my mother-in-law. I was raised to believe in honesty and open communication, which never meshed well with Catherine's passive-aggressive behavior. These traits of mine were actually what drew Bobby to me. He's more introverted, making me the perfect match for his quiet nature. My experience as a life coach has helped me understand human behavior, and it soon became clear to me that Catherine often acts out of self-interest. Despite her claims of doing what's best for Bobby, our personalities clashed from the start, and our first meeting set the stage for everything that followed. The moment that left a lasting impression on me occurred during a dinner with Bobby, his father Jeffrey, and Catherine. Out of nowhere, Catherine criticized my eating habits, suggesting that I should eat less. Her remark stunned everyone into silence. I was mortified, my face flushed with embarrassment, while Jeffrey looked uncomfortable, and Bobby, visibly upset, confronted his mother. Catherine attempted to backpedal, claiming it was just advice, referring to old pictures Bobby had shown her, saying I looked better back then. Although I was tempted to call her out, I held back, wanting to make a good impression during my first meeting with Bobby's family. I forced a polite smile, thanked her, and buried my frustration. Sadly, things didn't get any better after that. Catherine's behavior only worsened, and the tension between us kept growing. Despite my efforts to show her that I cared about Bobby, it only seemed to fuel her animosity. The one positive in all of this was my relationship with Bobby's father, Jeffrey. He was kind and welcoming, and I could tell that Bobby had inherited his gentle nature. Bobby's extended family and friends, including his childhood friend Wayne, also embraced me warmly. It was only Catherine who resisted. Her attempts to undermine me reached new heights during our wedding planning. She insisted on controlling every detail, from my hairstyle to my dress, even suggesting I replicate her bridal look from years ago. When I politely declined, she insulted me in front of my bridal party, calling me unattractive. Though she tried to backtrack, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Jeffrey stepped in, putting an end to her outbursts, but the emotional toll remained. Her constant negativity wore me down, and I knew something needed to change. Now, 5 years into our marriage, we found ourselves back at Bobby's childhood home for a Sunday dinner. Catherine had invited us, along with Wayne, hinting at some important news. Although I was skeptical of her intentions, what happened that evening took me completely by surprise. Catherine announced, with great drama, that she had planned a family trip to Florida for her birthday and was waiting for a confirmation letter. Everyone, including Bobby, was thrilled. Florida had always been a dream destination for Bobby, and the room buzzed with excitement. "That's incredible," Bobby said, his enthusiasm matched by everyone else. But just as the excitement peaked, Catherine turned to me and bluntly said, "Oh, actually, you're not coming." The words hung in the air, and the room fell silent. Bobby, stunned, demanded an explanation. His voice was a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What do you mean she's not coming? That can't be true." It became evident that Catherine had cancelled my ticket, claiming it was due to last-minute changes and the need to avoid extra costs. My heart sank as I realized my inclusion had been planned and then erased without a word from her. Tension erupted in the room, with Wayne and the others expressing their outrage. Under pressure, Catherine finally confessed her true reason. She wanted to be surrounded by those she felt closest to. "You just don't make that list," she said coldly, her words cut deep. Bobby, furious, demanded an explanation. "Wayne isn't even family, yet he's on the list, and Ashley isn't?" His voice trembled with anger. "How can you say she's not part of this family? She's my wife, Mom, that makes her family." Catherine's usual composure faltered, but she tried to justify her actions. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. "No," I said firmly, my voice slicing through the tension. All eyes turned to me, including Catherine's. Her confidence quickly shifted to discomfort. "This isn't about family or last-minute arrangements," I continued. "This is about respect, or the lack of it. I may not have been part of your life as long as Wayne, but I am your son's wife. That should mean something, and I won't let you diminish that any longer." The room fell silent, and Bobby squeezed my hand, offering support. For the first time, Catherine seemed genuinely uncertain about how to respond. In that moment, I knew something had changed. I laid bare the truth of the past 5 years, Catherine's blatant dislike for me, her behavior, and her narcissism. It was clear to everyone now, not just to me. When Catherine attempted to silence me with a veiled threat, I stood my ground. I told her that I would leave this toxic environment, but not before reaffirming my love for Bobby. Despite everything, I encouraged him to join the Florida trip, understanding the bond he shared with his mother, no matter how flawed. Facing Catherine, I made it clear, no matter how hard she tried to push me away, I was here to stay. My love for Bobby meant I was part of this family, whether she accepted it or not. When I confronted her about her unhealthy obsession with undermining me, her expression shifted, my words hit a nerve, and she could no longer hide behind her usual tactics. I called out her relentless attempts to belittle me, despite my constant patience and kindness. As I walked out, I made it clear, I would remain steadfast in my place in Bobby's life. Catherine's attempts to erase me were futile. For the first time, Catherine had no quick comeback, and the room was left in stunned silence. This confrontation wasn't just a moment of defiance, it was a turning point. Catherine's sharp tongue failed her, and the power dynamic shifted. Finally, I had found my voice, and Catherine's grip on our family had loosened. I could tell that my words had made an impact. As I was preparing to leave, Bobby offered to drive me home, his concern obvious, but I reassured him and urged him to stay for the family discussion about the trip. While retrieving my purse from the kitchen, I unexpectedly found Catherine there, seemingly taking a moment to collect herself. Her usual demand for me to leave was filled with even more hostility than usual. I ignored her and grabbed my purse, but my attention was drawn to a letter beside it, one that unmistakably had Catherine's handwriting. I paused, wondering what it could contain. Could it be another one of her petty attacks, or was it something more? From the looks of it, it appeared to be related to the Florida trip, so I decided to take a quick look. The letter, addressed to Wayne, started with affectionate words that made their bond sound solid, but as I read on, the tone shifted. Catherine expressed a certain coldness toward her son Bobby, while her fondness for Wayne remained unchanged. The message was clear, Catherine had a preference for Wayne over Bobby. I felt stunned by the revelation, which exposed a family dynamic much more broken than I had realized. I wrestled with the morality of reading someone else's letter, but I couldn't ignore what I had uncovered. Realizing the significance of what I had found, I weighed my next move carefully. Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey were still in the house, and I wondered how I could bring this up without escalating the already tense atmosphere. After confirming that I understood the letter's contents, I returned to the dining room, letter in hand. As I walked in, the room went quiet, and all eyes were on me. Jeffrey quickly apologized for Catherine's earlier behavior and assured me that I would be included in the Florida trip, dismissing her outburst as just a momentary lapse. But I wasn't there to talk about that. The letter was the real issue. Bobby's concerned expression was impossible to miss. He probably thought I had reached my breaking point after the confrontation. He had always admired my ability to remain patient and my deep love for him. Despite everything, I locked eyes with him and made a silent vow to protect him from what I had learned. When I asked about Catherine, Jeffrey explained that she had retreated, likely nursing a headache from our earlier exchange. Her absence felt familiar, but it was also a barrier. I knew I had to share what I had discovered, and with time of the essence, there was no room to wait. "All right," I said, "let's do this." Taking a deep breath, I started. "I found this in the kitchen." I held up the letter, letting its presence hang in the air. My voice faltered at first, but I pressed on. "This changes everything." I carefully explained the letter's contents, mindful of the weight it carried. The room was silent, except for Bobby's sharp exhale. The revelation hit hard, unraveling years of family dynamics. It became clear that this wasn't just about Catherine or the letter, it was about our family's future and what could still be salvaged or irrevocably lost. After gathering my courage, I shared the letter's details with Bobby, Wayne, and Jeffrey. Catherine's resentment toward me was unmistakable, and she had planned to cut Bobby out of her will in favor of Wayne. She blamed me for her strained relationship with Bobby. Her bitterness was undeniable. When I finished reading, the atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Jeffrey, always the peacekeeper, fought back tears. Wayne was shocked, struggling to process the magnitude of Catherine's intentions. But Bobby, his emotions shifted from hurt to fury, from disbelief to indignation. How could his own mother justify cutting him off and blaming me? It was a wake-up call for all of us. exposing the depth of Catherine's manipulation. The conversation that followed was emotional, with Bobby expressing his frustration over her toxic behavior. It became clear that something needed to change. 3 weeks later, the Florida trip arrived. Unbeknownst to Catherine, a response had been set in motion as a direct result of her actions. On the morning of the trip, Catherine found a letter from Jeffrey at her bedside, written in a neutral tone. It instructed her to meet the family at the airport, implying that everything was proceeding as planned. Eager to begin the trip, Catherine rushed to the airport, unaware that the family dynamic had shifted dramatically in response to her behavior. At the airport, Catherine's frantic search for the family mirrored the confusion and isolation she had caused with her actions. Assuming they were already on the plane, she boarded, hoping to reunite with them in Florida. After a long flight, Catherine eagerly called Jeffrey, expecting to celebrate together. Instead, Jeffrey revealed the truth: the family hadn't gone to Florida, they were still at home, united in their decision to stand against the discord Catherine had tried to sow. Catherine's shock was palpable as Jeffrey confronted her with the contents of the letter, exposing her plan to cut Bobby out of her will and her unjustified hostility toward me. Catherine's denials were swiftly dismissed, and the family made it clear that her actions had permanently fractured their trust. The confrontation reached its peak when the family made a unanimous decision: Catherine would be left to reflect on her actions. Even on her birthday, her divisive behavior had isolated her, and they hoped the time alone would give her a chance to reconsider. The unity of the family was evident. Bobby, Jeffrey, Wayne, and I stood together, valuing respect and forgiveness, but holding Catherine accountable for the pain she had caused. Catherine's moment of vulnerability was rare, and in desperation, she reached out to Jeffrey, seeking his company, but Jeffrey remained firm, emphasizing that any attempt to rejoin the family would require a serious discussion about boundaries and real change in her behavior. Bobby, too, made it clear that any future relationship with his mother depended on her willingness to change. He set firm boundaries, warning her that further disrespect would result in permanent estrangement. Wayne, recognizing his role in enabling her behavior, distanced himself, further isolating her. Despite Catherine's pleas for me to mediate, I remained firm in my belief that repairing her relationships was her responsibility alone. Since that day, Catherine has worked to repair the damage. Though rebuilding trust and respect has been a slow and difficult process, there is hope that she will learn from this experience and come to understand the value of family and the far-reaching consequences of her actions. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Stay tuned.